Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam and ba'd. So now we're going to talk about the sunan of wudu, meaning we're going to talk about those things that have to do with purification that are not an obligation. So before we talked about the obligatory actions that you must do, that you must wash for wudu, that you must do. But now we're going to talk about those things which are recommended. That means, you're advised to do it because you'll get ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you leave it, you won't get any punishment. And everyone should be taking notes meticulously, writing in your notebook, because maybe you're going to have to write a paragraph about it. Okay, quiet. You will have to write about it though. Okay, so the sunans of wudu. The first thing is the tasmiyah, meaning saying Bismillah. This is a sunan of wudu, not an obligation of wudu. So that means if you make wudu without saying Bismillah, your wudu is okay. But if you say the Bismillah before you make wudu, then this is something extra and you will get ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, La wudu liman lam yadhkur ismullah alayh. Okay, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, there is no wudu for the one who does not mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name before it. Okay? Yeah, but there's other evidences that show that it is not an obligation. So this is highly recommended. It's something you should do. You'll get ajr, but if you leave it, your wudu is okay. Okay? As long as you have the intention. So the first thing is the tasmiyah, is saying Bismillah. The second thing is using the miswak. As we mentioned before, I think we talked about that before, I thought, in this class. Just wait. We mentioned the miswak anyway. And the miswak, again, it's using the toothbrush, the traditional toothbrush that they find in the Arab countries. Go ahead and unlock the door for her and have her be quiet and sit down. And so the miswak, if you use the miswak during your wudu, quiet and sit down. If you use the miswak for your wudu, listen up, Fudley. If you use the miswak during your wudu, you'll get ajr for this. But you don't have to do it. It's not an obligation. But it's recommended. It's another thing. When we say it's recommended, that means you get ajr for it if you do it. And if you don't do it, there's no punishment. So it's something, it's extra. So if you use the miswak, that is also something recommended. And the Prophet ﷺ said in this regard, just questions afterwards, لَوْ لَا نَشُقَّ عَلَى أُمَّتِي لِأَمَرْتُهُمْ بِسَوَاكٍ لِكُلِّ صَلَاةٍ. Or in another narration, إِنْدَ كُلِّ wudu. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if I didn't fear, I think we studied this hadith in this class, I thought, if I didn't fear that this will be a harm upon or a difficulty for my ummah, from my community, then I would have commanded them to use the miswak for every salat or every wudu. So that shows us that it's recommended, that it's not an obligation. Okay, and moving right along, another thing that is recommended for wudu is washing the hands in the beginning of wudu. Remember, Sultan, you mentioned about washing the hands. That is not an obligation, but that is recommended. So that means right at the beginning when you're going to make wudu, if you turn on the sink water or whatever, wherever you're washing your hands, and you wash your hands 3 times, this is a sunnah. That means you've gotten a sunnah, you've gotten something that's not an obligation that the Prophet ﷺ recommended for us to do or did, and this is something you'll get ajr for, but it's not an obligation. So if you begin your wudu, you wash your hands, that means you've done something extra that you will get reward for. That is in accordance with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Good. Another thing which is recommended as a part of the wudu is to use extra water when you are, to use, not extra water, but to be more thorough and more effective, meaning that you're using your water and you're really trying to clean out your nose very good. and you're using water to really rinse your mouth very good. This is something that is recommended. Okay, if you're doing it thoroughly, you're trying to clean, you're using the water and you're sniffing it all the way up your nose to really clean your nose, this is a sunnah. This is something you will get extra ajr for this. But you should not do this when you're fasting. The Prophet ﷺ warned against doing this when you're fasting. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَبَالَغْ فِي الْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ إِلَّا أَن تُكُونَ صَائِمًا. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not, or he said, be excessive or use the water and clean your nose very well and your mouth very, gargling very deep in your throat, except when you're fasting. And the reason is because when you're fasting, if you gargle a lot, really excessively, the water may go down your throat into your stomach, breaking your fast. Or it may from your nose, because the nose, it attaches to that same system. It goes down your esophagus, and it will go into your throat and down into your stomach. So that's why you should not be excessive when you're fasting. When you're fasting, no. But any other time you want to make wudu, brushing your teeth is something different though. Brushing your teeth has nothing to do with the wudu. Except for we mentioned using the miswak. Using the miswak, that is not an obligation. That is a sunnah. That is a recommended thing that the Prophet ﷺ recommended for us to do. So you'll get ajr for that. Okay, good. And the next thing, which is also another thing which is recommended to do, and that is to rub the body parts. So when you're washing, if you rub the body parts, and rubbing, if someone has a beard, like my beard isn't that thick or anything, but if he takes the water and he goes like this through his beard, to make sure all the hairs are getting, and definitely you want to make sure the chin is getting, the waters are touching the chin, but he's doing the extra, then this is also a sunnah. But the obligatory thing is that he makes sure that water touches the skin in his beard. Okay? So that is an obligatory thing for the person who has a beard. And also, another thing is using, starting with the right before the left. That's also a sunnah. That's also something you'll get, it's extra by starting with the right. And we know that, I think we talked about the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ preferred to use the right. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ used to do many and prefer to use his right in many actions. So she said, Kana Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at-tayammunu fi tana'ulihi wa turujulihi wa tuhurihi wa fi sha'nihi kulli. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to prefer to use his right when he was combing his hair, when he was putting on his sandals, and doing things that were pure, doing, in tahara. So that means in making wudu. Okay? So that shows us that we should try to use the right in the wudu, and that is something extra. That's something you'll get rewarded from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next thing is washing the limbs 3 times, except the hair. Except the ras, except the head, except for wiping the head. Okay? If you do, and which a part of the head is the ears. Okay? So meaning, if you wash when you begin and you wash you wash your face and your nose and your mouth 3 times. So you begin, you wash, put water in your mouth and in your nose 3 times. And you blow it out 3 times. Then, and you wash in your face 3 times. And then you wash your hand to the elbow 3 times on the right, 3 times on the left, and wiping over your head 1 time. The head only once. So you never do the head 3 times. That's not from the sunnah. So you do the head only once, wiping the head, and coming back, cleaning out your ears like this, with your index finger inside your ears, and you just wipe it like that. Okay? And that means you will got the sunnah. And wiping I'm sorry, not wiping, but washing the feet 3 times. Washing the right foot 3 times, washing the left foot 3 times. So then that means you will have the sunnah. That's a sunnah. You have to wash your feet, but you only have to wash it 1 time. So, no, you don't have to write down everything. I want you to get the general notes. Okay, I just want you to understand those things that are not an obligation, but that you get extra reward for. So doing it 3 times, you get extra ajr, but it's not an obligation. You only have to do your mouth once, your nose once, your face 1 time. You only have to do your right arm once and left arm once. For example, if you didn't have a lot of water, okay, maybe you would just only do it once, so that way you have enough water to finish cleaning yourself. You understand? Doing the actions of wudu. So the actions of wudu, it's from the sunnah to do them 3 times, but it is not an obligation. And of course, this does not include wiping the head and the ears, because that should only be done once. That's not done 3 times. You don't wipe your head like this, and then again, and then this, like this. No. If you're listening to what I said, maybe 3 times I've said it in a row, that we only do that 1 time.
Yeah, this 1 time.
Yes. And the other actions of wudu, you only have to do them 1 time. It's from the sunnah, meaning all those things are from the sunnah, but it is an extra deed or an extra thing that you'll get rewarded for if you do it 3 times, except wiping the head. Okay? And that again, doing the arms, clean the arms and the hands, the feet 3 times, the mouth and the nose and the face, those things 3 times. And then that means you will get the extra reward, but you only have to do it how many times, Miski? No, you only have to do it 1 time. If you were listening and not playing with your feet, so sit up like you should sit in your chair and listen. Okay, listen up. Let me finish. So, also, another thing which you will get ajr for, which is not an obligation, which is recommended, is making the dhikr after you make the wudu. So, for example, after you make wudu, if you say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, okay, then if you do that after you make wudu, you'll get ajr for that, but it's not an obligation. It's not something you have to do for the wudu. If you do it, you'll get extra ajr. You understand? What did I say, Liban? Well, I said Liban, huh? If I do what? No. Wudu, you have to do it. If you do the dhikr, excellent. Jazakumullah khairan. Very good. So she was listening. So if you make this dhikr, if you make this, I said she. She is a she, right? Miski is a she. Yes, she was listening. She was listening when I was speaking, which I want you to do more of. Okay, good. So in this regard, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma minkum ahad يتوضأ فيصبغ الوضوء ثم يقول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله إلا فتحت له أبواب الجنة ثمانية يدخل من أيها شاء." So the Prophet ﷺ said that if one of you, or there's not any one of you who does this, who, perfectly does his wudu, he does it very well, and then he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, and He's the only, and He has no partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His last prophet and messenger, or His last prophet and slave. So if one of you says this, then Allah will open for him any of the 8 doors of paradise, and he can enter it from wherever he wants. So that shows us it's recommended, that it's not an obligation, and that it's very important to do that dhikr. And so I ask Allah